Howdy, YouTube. Welcome back to the bio. Another episode of The Captain coming at you. So, Captain's Humble Beginnings, Part N. For, I think I left off at the beginning of the coach house. So, when I was a kid, I grew up near the town of Kemptville in a town called Smith Falls. And we would four-wheeler. These are like off-road vehicles. North Americans know what a four-wheeler is, but in case you're a foreigner, it's just these fun little, like dirt bikes, but like motorbikes, but with four wheels. On all these trails, between all these small towns, And Smith Falls, you couldn't drive them in town, so you'd have to like sneak your way to the edge of town by pushing it without running it. And then as soon as you got out of town, you could throw your helmet on and just go and rip. And so we would go all over the place. And I would come to Kemptville all the time as a kid. Especially on weekends when I was home from private school and or juvie. And depends what area we're in. And what happened was there was this bar in Kemptville owned by this Lebanese guy. And it was literally packed wall to wall almost every night. Now we are talking, 90s, different era, of course. But they didn't card. They didn't ask for identification. So, and there would always be a lot of snowmobiles in the winter there, 4x4s and dirt bikes in the summer, and all up and down the highway would be trucks parked along the side of the highway where the truckers would jump out, walk maybe half a kilometer, because they had to park so far away because there's so many other trucks there first, to come party at this bar. And it has a small hotel beside it in the beginning. And then the guy built his house in the back and stuff. I watched as my childhood those stages grew. And in fact, I have pictures of it all. Framed big pictures, actually. So, which are in my house. But it was a license to print money, this place. I would lose 50, 60 bucks a night in there. And like I said, being a 14 or 15-year-old kid, being able to slip into the bar and party with drunken older girls, 2 thumbs up, right? Like, I'd go back to private school and tell those stories. They wouldn't believe me. And I'd have to, back then, you'd have these old disposable cameras. You'd have to, get developed and stuff. But you couldn't develop risque pictures because it was always, in a grocery store or something. And if they saw nudity and youth and things like that, you're getting hammered just like you would today, right? So I would get pictures, but they weren't really the kind of pictures I wanted to share. They weren't, really showcasing how much fun we were having. Sometimes I would even get guys who would come home with me from the private school for the weekend or for the week during March break or whatever, because they wanted to party like this for real, and they had big bucks. So I'd be like, yeah, you can come home with me, but you got to pay for everything. And they would, no problem, right? So we would go to this place, and they would see it was real, and then when we go back to school, they would be like, yeah, it was fun, blah, 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 blah. And just up and graded my status as, the party guy. Hence, I got kicked out of so many of those schools. But what happened was, I stopped going for years and years and years because as, life took me in different paths. I wasn't in Kemptville anymore. I don't know what happened to the place and why it ran into disrepair. But the hotel grew a lot in my decade plus, as did the city of Kemptville, town of Kemptville, in my 15 or 10 year absence from the town. So when I did come back, because I bought a house in the area and I was working at that same hotel I ended up working for, but for no longer the Lebanese guy, he had privately sold it to 2 different foreigners, and he made his money, let's just put it that way. But the foreigners kept ruining the place, and so it got to the point where the hotel part of there was just okay, kind of grungy, kind of low-key, but the restaurant was closed. And I always said to myself, what a shame. It was all boarded up, and I was like, man. And I would tell stories to friends. I was playing D&D and stuff, and I was talking to other locals who remembered the place. And some of them, they didn't remember me. I was just another anonymous kid back then, right? But they knew how much fun the place used to be. And the town only had 2 bars left. And one was a shitty little Irish pub run by a cheap guy. The TV had static on it. There was nothing to do but look at your ugly neighbor beside you. No dartboards, no pool tables, no nothing. And the other place had a pool table or two, but you had to go down some dangerous ass stairs when you were drinking to get to it. And it really wasn't that exciting. And it was always the town drunks. And it was mostly just dudes. It was a sausage factory. So when I came back to town and I saw that's all there was, I was like, what a bummer, you know? But, oh, and of course we had a Legion too, but still have a Legion. I think that's the only one that's left. But what happened was, as I was working in the hotel, the original Lebanese guy had a friend by the same name, and he reopened the restaurant. He renovated it. He put new windows in. He put 2 pool tables in. You know, he had it going nice. But he wasn't running it like a bar. He was closed by 9 p.m. every night. It was a lunch place where he'd gather in some old people for the odd dinners, mostly Friday nights, to be honest. But he was doing a traditional scam that a lot of foreigners do on the restaurants here, where you open a place, you get it running, you spend 3 to 6 months just racking up debt. You don't pay a single utility, you burn every food supplier you can, and you just put all the money in your pocket. And I didn't know he was doing this. So when I quit working for the guy who owned the hotel, I went over and talked to him. I'm like, look, why don't you let me come in and partner in with you a little bit, and I'll open from like the 8 p.m. till 2 a.m. when bars are open, and you don't even have to pay me. When the place starts profiting, just give me a profit share. I got nothing else going on for me, and I knew I could make the place grow. And in the very first week of doing that, I had $18 in sales. I sold a few beers and a few Cokes, because nobody knew it was open late. And we're talking in the winter, right? It was like, I think it was early December. Yeah, I think it was early December, because I got stuck dealing with a weird crackhead lady on Christmas Eve. So, or was it the night before Christmas Eve? Anyways, the last week of the, 4 or 5 weeks I got to do this experiment, I was at 3,800 in sales for the week. Clear growth, right? Because once people knew, hey, it's open. Oh, and it's got a cool guy running the bar who, is having a good time. Doesn't be an asshole about cutting you off. There's pool tables there, because there's no pool tables in town anymore, because that one with the stairs had closed down by now. So it was one of these things where I saw the potential in the place. I really did. And I was supposed to stay doing this experiment indefinitely, kind of, right? And then I would maybe even buy him out some point. But he was banging one of his waitresses on the side, a young slutty girl with big tits. And she had a man. And one day she got soup drunk while I was working on the overnight. Where, she fell off the toilet. We and her boyfriend had to put her pants back on her. So yeah, I saw her cooch and all that stuff. I didn't really care, though. I didn't go into all the bars and restaurants I've worked at in my life in these blogs, because there's no point. But this was not the first restaurant bar. It was the first one I was going to own, for sure. But I'd worked in many others, and including strip clubs. So that's why I see a booby and just not like, ooh, I'm not a Muslim. I don't even, unless a girl rubs up on me, I'm not even getting attracted, right? I need actual interaction. Just seeing isn't enough to get any kind of, wood. But what happened was, this boyfriend really didn't like that I had to help him and help his woman get out of there and blah, blah, blah. So the next day she went and told him I was ripping him off, that I wasn't declaring sales, and I was pocketing money, and I was doing all these things that I wasn't doing. And there was even a computer till and everything's on camera. So it's I'm not a scammer like that. That's why people trusted me in all my previous businesses, right? So, but him being an old foreign guy, and she is sucking his dick all the time, he wasn't going to get rid of her. He just decided to stop the experiment. He'll go back to closing at 8. Then in April sometime, I was going to buy it off him. I said, well, look, I'm still interested, and he wanted to sell. I knew he wanted to sell, because we'd already talked about that a lot. I said, I'll just buy it off you in April, because I had a mortgage maturity where I could easily go and borrow an extra 20, 30, 40,000. And that's what I was going to use to buy out this place. Well, he calls me up 3 weeks before that was due. Before we had our deal worked out, and I'm doing nothing. I'm just playing D&D with the kids, occasionally going into Ottawa. I got no job, but I don't really need one at this stage, so that's okay. But it's just, I'm still got a lot of empty time on my hands. And he's like, oh, my family's sick in Lebanon, I have to go now. So either you buy now or I close and then you have to get a new liquor ticket and this and that and this and that. I was like, oh, no, I don't want to have to deal with getting a new liquor ticket and all the bullshit of starting over, right? So I said, okay, well, what can we do? I don't have a lot of money on me. I come up with like $4 or $5 right now. Like, that's good enough. I was like, you went from 40 grand to $5 grand? That seems really awesome. He's like, yeah, and there's a bit of a gas bill you have to cover. I thought, well, there's no way the gas bill's $35,000, so okay. And he left me some inventory even. Like, he was like in and anxious to go. So his story of I gotta run to Lebanon seemed believable. It was horseshit. He had 2 other restaurants. I knew he had 2 other restaurants, but he had to focus on those. And he'd run up every debt he could on this place. So he knew that the gas company was coming to shut him off. Hydroelectric company was coming to shut him off. And no suppliers would bring him any more food. He knew this, and that. So he just thought, screw the white man. So 3 days after taking over the place, the gas did get shut off. And I was like, what? And they wanted like $13,000 to turn it back on because that's how much bill he had rocked up. And I was like, whoa, first off, this guy's gone. He's been gone for about a month now. I lied. I'm the new owner. I've got my own business license, my own everything. Like, I need you to turn my gas on. And I was able to negotiate that, and they turned it on for like $1,000 deposit. 1 second. Shucks, I missed a beer delivery. I'll have to walk in the house later. So anyways, what happened was, I now have this restaurant bar with the 2 pool tables. It's got a nicer, like, fireplacey, ritzier kind of upper class seating area as well. And it's got a whole banquet hall on it. And I'm still attached to that hotel. So as soon as the hotel owner realized I had gotten it and I got it open and I stayed open even after the gas thing, because they all were new. They all knew the gas thing. They all knew all this stuff except for me, right? So he was expecting I was just going to get swindled out of my $5K and I'm going to fold right away. Nope. I stayed open. I kept it going. So he made me a deal where he wasn't going to have a night clerk anymore, like I used to be, because he had been stuck working it since he had fired me. And he was only coming in 2 or 3 nights a week on weekends, really. He's like, look, I'll make you a deal. You can rent rooms still. I'll tell people to come to the bar to see you to get rooms. Because he knew I knew how to make the cards and do all the crap. And I'll give you a cut. I'll give you $10 per room or whatever that you rent on your time. And you can rent to your customers. So people drink too much, boom. And if you want, if you're going to do breakfast, I'll give you a breakfast contract, which will have your rent. If you sell enough breakfasts, right? So I was like, oh, well, that sounds like a good deal. So I agreed. It became me babysitting the whole property for at least 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And sure, I would do breakfasts, but I had to be there to do most of the breakfasts as early as 6 a.m. And I don't close my bar till 2:30. So it became a point where 3 days a week, I was just 24 hours. What's the point in closing for 2 hours, right? Or if I did, I'd lock the door just so I could clean up and start my breakfast prep. And I really wasn't a great cook before this place. I had always been a bartender, a server, a greeter, manager, but I had never had to do my own cooking. Sure, I know how to do fries and wings and basic idiot-proof stuff, right? But I wasn't a chef. But this place forced me to, especially breakfast. Like, now I'm an amazing breakfast chef. I could breakfast chef with one arm, drunk, hungover, not sleeping in 3 days. And this place is what gave me that, the Coach House. Mama's Coach House. And then we had to rebrand because he would rent to anybody in the hotel, even people without credit cards. And so you get some unsavory shitheads that come in when you no longer have the security of needing a credit card, right? That weeds out the lowlifes, weeds out the poor people when you require a credit card to rent a room in Canada. But he went and rented to a bunch of Londoners. And for all those folks who don't believe my stories, you can Google this one, because this one made major newspapers all across the country. But he rented to 3 crackheads who were down in the comfort area pretending to be contractors, but were really just breaking into businesses on the overnights and stealing. They go in through roof access points and things like that and loot them. And so when they first came in, because they were fellow Canadians and stuff, and they were there under contract, they were staying long term, all these things that seemed like I should be able to trust on them. And I thought because they were a contractor team with a contractor boss. Like, I met the boss already, that they were the kind of clients that would be in on a credit card. I didn't realize they would be in on no deposits, right? So I let them run a very small bar tab, $600-700, right? And they could pay me on their paydays. And the first week they did all pay. So that gave me, confidence to continue the process and blah, blah, blah. First week I actually only gave them 200 each. And then it got up to where it was about 600. And that was mostly booze and food, odd pool table fees here and there, a ride into town once, because the hotel wasn't right in town. And I didn't mind these guys in the sense that, I knew what they were. Not that they were criminals, but just that they were drug addict losers, for lack of a better term. But they would sometimes harass the staff in ways that I didn't accept. And I had already pulled the one scrawny guy aside a few times and said to him, like, yo, you can't be groping on them. You can't be trying to touch their hoo-haws. You can't say certain things like that to them or try to, be rude to them when they cut you off. Like, if you've had too much where you're falling down and you get sick in the bar, because you did that one night, your night's over. You fall down, it's all over. You puke, it's all over. Those have always been my rules, right? It wasn't just him. It was just a general policy I had. And it's way better than what the laws say I have to do. So I'm already being lenient. But it was an afternoon, and his boss wanted them all to go to some job. But he wanted to and he was taking them out to dinner somewhere else. So I wasn't even making any money on dinner. I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? So that's okay. Or what the heck, sorry, I don't mean to swear there. And, but he's angry because he's really drunk already, and he's trying to get another last beer. And I'm like, no, because he wants it on his tab too, and his tab was already pretty much maxed. And it's like 3 more days till payday. So I was like, no, there's no more beer for you. You've been cut off. Your boss is waiting for you outside. Just go, and I'll see you tonight when you get back. And he's like, no, I'll do whatever I want. Give me a beer. And he started harassing my waitress on duty. Then he picks up a pool ball like he's going to smash her in the face with it. I can't let that happen. I defend my staff. So he ate a quart-sized beer bottle. Now, a quart-sized beer bottle is like a wine bottle-sized bottle, right? So it got broken in the fight, and he had to require several hundred stitches and get airlifted out of the parking lot. Oops. I got arrested because, obvious reasons. And I cooperated enough with the cops, like I didn't fight them off or anything like that. I got on the broken glass floor and got a few cuts myself, and, when they came. And they came all SWAT team style too, like, because, end of the world. And of course that flew through town like mad. The story of how, I carved up this crackhead and blah, 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 blah. Now, they did their investigation, and one of my staff was there for 90% of an older guy too, so he was able to confirm that no, this guy tried to pool ball the girl, and Jimmy tried to stop him, and then he tried to pool ball Jimmy, so Jimmy fucked him up. You know what I mean? So clear-cut self-defense case. And even though I have a reasonable record of both my service record and then my criminal record, they knew. Like, they'd already seen I'd bounced guys out of this place already that had been problems. Just punching, nothing brutal, no airlifting to hospital. But they knew that I was not the kind of guy who was going to let any of these guys F around, right? They'd find out. So they did their investigation, and I got dismissed. They said, okay, look, you're just the merchant defending yourself. No worries. He's a crackhead loser with a huge rap sheet. And then they found out that these guys were robbing all the stores in the area. So it was like, I pretty much had solved a problem they were investigating but couldn't figure out, right? So, but sales plummeted. People were afraid to come to the bar. I was now labeled some sort of crazy psycho, blah, 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 right? Nobody wanted to hear the facts. It was like an early version of cancel culture. So my spouse, who never did lose her job, even though I grabbed this because it was a backup, so if she did lose her job, she would have this place as an instant walk-in. She decided she would start doing it. She was on a mat leave. We had just had my third son, 3D. That's not his name. Just his initials are 3D, so we always call him 3D. And so what happened was I stayed home with the kids, take care of the farm, tinker, clean, do that kind of stuff. make sure everyone went to school, and she ran the bar at nights. And it started picking back up. We had the card nights, like poker nights, and we had the pool tournament. We started really networking it. We had karaoke twice a week, and I had a guy who I'd pretty much built up from having nothing. He was renting equipment from one of my friends. He had his own everything, his own smoke show, his own light setup, everything. And this was pre-YouTube for karaoke, right? So it was important who you picked because they had to have a good selection of music. And they had to be able to get new music when you needed it. Otherwise, people would lose interest, right? So she rebuilt the bar quite nicely. And then I slowly got reintegrated back in. It started with me being the breakfast cook in the mornings because my original breakfast cook, Little Russ, was a bit of a substance abusive guy too. That's the problem. When you own a restaurant business here in North America, it's really, really, really hard to not find cooks and even servers that don't have serious substance abuse issues. And so the reliability on them is meh, meh, you know. So I'm back in doing that, and the town seems to have forgiven me, and people are coming in again, and we're doing bands twice a week, every Friday, Saturday night. I have bands booked for like 6 months in advance. Low tier bands, some D levels for like special occasions, you know, but nothing, you know, extravagant. And the banquet hall is getting rented for the odd wedding here and there. The nice fine dining area on Friday, Saturday nights before the bands, we'd actually have nice dinners in there so couples could get dinner and a show. And this is where I started really improving, and my spouse would come in with me because she was still on mat leave, and we would work it together. We'd get the odd cook. I got this young lad once for a while there, Jesse. He was for breakfast, but started banging one of the waitresses and lost his effort for the job. Plus, they would lock up sometimes to go bang in the back, and then customers wouldn't come. So the breakfast crowd, which had been growing substantially and been really, really good, including a few weekly meetings of local merchant guilds, dwindled up to nothing. And so I couldn't pay him. So it got to the point where he was like a month without pay. And I'm like, well, bro, like, why does everyone keep telling me you're closed during the mornings? Even the hotel owner's saying his guests come over to cash in their breakfast coupon and the doors are locked. And they didn't want to admit to me what was going on. So it got to the point where I didn't want to run the place anymore. I'm burning myself out at both ends. And the Pakistani guy who was the owner of the hotel, my former boss, Ashrash as we called him, his real name was Ashraf, but if he saw you had a busy night, he would wander on over and be like, yo, you got some money for me? Yo, you got some money for me? Even if I didn't owe money yet. Do you know what I mean? He's like, oh, you pay me in advance? It's okay, it's okay. Because he just wanted to put it in his pocket, right? He's a locust. And he wasn't repairing anything. And I would spend about 10 to 12 hours a week, normally on the overnight when I was closed or really quiet, doing certain maintenances to the property to keep it so it was health board approved, because there were just things that were wrong with the place that you couldn't really fix them properly. You just had to keep bandaging it along, right? Because the place wasn't making fist over fist money like it did in my childhood. So the Pakistani guy sold the entire hotel to one of my staff's mother, who was a shady little person. And they immediately didn't want me there because she wanted to put her son, who had been my manager for different tenures, like he had left to go to school and then come back, and I just put him right back into a manager position. Like, I liked the kid a lot. He was a funny guy, and he knew a lot of the local youth, so he brought in customers, right? Plus, he was a good bartender, so I liked that, right? But it was one of those things where they felt they could run it without me, and so they pushed me out. And so what happened was I left the day that my fourth son was born, because my woman was pregnant. That's why she was on mat leave for some of that. And she got pregnant during an amazing Halloween party we had, because I did some really good costume bashes there. The 2 Halloweens I owned the place for. So I had the place for 18 months. And we did okay with it, in the sense, like, it never really made us money, but it paid bills. It normally paid for itself. But when they forced me out, I gave them an 8-page letter explaining what they were going to need to do to stay open. And they didn't follow any of it. And in less than 8 days later, like less than a week, the government had come in and shut them down, right? They just couldn't pass. They weren't listening to any of the instructions I did. And they never got open again. In fact, it's still closed to this day. And all my equipment's in there that I got forced to leave behind. And so it's funny because after this couple failed with it, it was actually 2 women. When I say couple, it was just 2 women who had taken it over from the Pakistani man. Another group from India or Pakistan had bought it. And actually, they're really good owners. They renovated the crap out of the place. They put over $2 million in new beds and new furniture, and they fixed the roof proper. Like, they're not being locust owners. And in fact, they still own it, and it's going way better. Now, they had never opened up the restaurant bar. And every time I went in to chat with them when they first took over to see what was going on, this and that, see if I get an overnight job or whatever, they made it clear if I want to take that restaurant back over. But, I did give myself my word when I left that I would not take it back, even if it was given to me for free. Because I felt that I had been wronged in so many levels, and it was a lot of stress. And I just didn't feel it anymore, right? So I was like, I'm done. I lost enough on the place. I spent a lot of time, 18 months, I got all those negatives on my reputation because of it. So I left the coach house, and we had called it the Smoke and Spur by the end of the time. We rebranded after that stabbing incident. We rebranded as the Smoking Spur and tried to distance ourselves from the old era of the place as much as possible. But it was one of these things where it was the first restaurant that I owned outright. Every decision was mine. I had to make it or break it, right? And so I used all the experience I had learned at these other positions to succeed or fail, depends who you're talking to, at that spot. And I think I did the best I could. I mean, I ran it longer than any other party outside of the original owner. Because the original owner, there have been many couples, many groups had come in between me and him. But none of them even made it to a year and a half. So I made it to a year and a half. So, no, I think that, and that's what I'm doing in the Philippines now. I'm using those skill sets to try and reopen a bar over there, and with really good food. And there you can have party, you can have good, let people get pissed up drunk and have a great time. And bands are easier to come by, and all these other, and I want to bring bands from here. I've talked to guys I know who are small-time band players. I'm like, guys, come on over. So I guess part N was all about the coach house. So I'll even call it part N, the coach house. So like, follow, and subscribe. I will get to part O tomorrow. So tune in to catch it. And thanks for watching. And of course, like I said, subscribe. Come on, subscribe. It costs you nothing. And hit the bell so you can catch up with new videos when they post. And I'm always open to questions. And I love your comments, even you haters, because it just makes me look better. Have a great day.